Just because you're in prison, you don't have to be a prisoner. You got to be a man. What the circumstances are, and you got to press forward. You know you're innocent. You got to keep fighting. I'm just glad to be out, glad to be a free man. And we made it.
Trapped behind bars for crimes they never committed.
I originally got convicted. I was 19 years old, and I got sentenced to 40 to 100 years in prison. I thought that I was going to die in prison, and I'm so happy that I was wrong.
These 5 innocent people endured years of lost freedom and shattered dreams. Their harrowing stories expose the deep flaws in the justice system that upended their lives.
Nobody believed me back then. No one. Besides my mother, nobody believed me.
I'm so overwhelmed and so happy and so grateful for all the people that have believed in me and fought for me for all these years.
Kirsten Lato, a young woman from Nevada, faced a devastating miscarriage of justice when she was wrongfully accused and convicted for the murder of Duran Bailey in Las Vegas in 2001. I would really appreciate if you support us by subscribe to our channel and hit the bell before we start. Thanks. At just 18, Kirsten had been involved in a separate incident where she used a pocket knife to defend herself against a man attempting to assault her. This event would later be used against her, as authorities linked it to Bailey's death, despite no evidence connecting her to the crime scene. Kirsten was initially sentenced to 40 to 100 years in prison.
I originally got convicted. I was 19 years old, and I got sentenced to 40 to 100 years in prison. I thought that I was going to die in prison, and I'm so happy that I was wrong.
But new evidence later surfaced, leading to a retrial and a reduced sentence of 13 to 45 years. The case's turning point came after it was revealed that the evidence used to convict her was unreliable and did not conclusively tie her to the crime. Witnesses placing her in a different part of the state on the day of Bailey's death and the lack of forensic evidence pointing to her involvement were crucial elements that had been overlooked or dismissed in her original trial. Despite maintaining her innocence, her appeals were repeatedly denied for years, leaving her in a legal battle to prove her innocence. In December 2017, Kirsten's release was finally ordered after gaining national attention and support from advocates who highlighted the flaws in her case.
A judge ordered that the charges against Kirsten Lato be dropped and said Lato should immediately be released from prison.
Although she had to remain in custody for an additional year due to an unrelated matter, she was eventually freed in January 2019. By the time of her release, Kirsten had spent 16 years behind bars for a crime she did not commit. Her story serves as a stark reminder of the potential for errors within the criminal justice system, where wrongful convictions can ruin innocent lives. The fight for her exoneration underscores the importance of examining and re-examining cases with credible evidence to ensure justice is truly served.
Every single day I think of Christopher. The hardest thing I'm dealing with now is when I see people his age. He's going to be 37.
Deborah Milka was wrongfully convicted of orchestrating the murder of her 4-year-old son, Christopher, in December 1989. 2 men, James Stiers and Roger Scott, were arrested for the crime, with Scott pointing the finger at Deborah, suggesting that she had planned the murder. Despite this accusation, there was no direct evidence linking Deborah to the scene of the crime, and she consistently maintained her innocence. The prosecution's case largely relied on the testimony of Detective Armando Saldate Jr., who claimed that Deborah had confessed to him during an unrecorded interview. It wasn't until 2013 that a 3-judge panel from the U.S. Ninth Circuit Court overturned her conviction, citing prosecutorial misconduct. The prosecuting attorney had failed to disclose Detective Saldate's history of misconduct, which included allegations of lying under oath and coercing confessions. Moreover, the supposed confession was never corroborated by any evidence or witnesses, raising significant questions about its credibility. In 2015, Deborah's charges were formally dismissed with prejudice, meaning she could not be retried for the same crime. Her case illustrates how misconduct and the suppression of crucial information can lead to wrongful convictions. After spending over 25 years in prison for a crime she did not commit, Deborah was finally able to walk free. The experience left her deeply scarred, yet she became an outspoken advocate for justice reform, hoping to bring awareness to the dangers of faulty convictions. Her exoneration, while bittersweet, serves as a reminder of the enduring strength of the human spirit in the face of profound injustice. In 2005, Alfred Brown was wrongfully convicted and sentenced to death for the murder of a Houston police officer during a botched robbery. Despite his claims of innocence, Brown was found guilty, largely due to faulty eyewitness testimony and the suppression of crucial evidence by the prosecution. Brown had an alibi that placed him at his girlfriend's apartment at the time of the crime, but the phone records supporting his alibi were not disclosed to the defense. Years later, in 2014, a review of the case revealed that the records were indeed withheld, leading the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals to overturn his conviction and order a new trial. With no substantial evidence to retry him, Brown was released in June 2015, having spent nearly a decade on death row. The case became a glaring example of the flaws in the criminal justice system, particularly concerning the death penalty, where the stakes are life and death. Brown's story is a testament to the perseverance required to fight a wrongful conviction. His release marked not just a personal victory, but also highlighted the systemic issues that allow such injustices to occur. Although he was exonerated, his experience left lasting emotional scars and underscored the need for stronger safeguards to prevent wrongful convictions, especially in capital cases.
I'm just glad to be out, glad to be a free man. You know, you sit in prison for so long, you think about this day, but when it actually comes, you just want to do something, you know?
Ricky Jackson was just 18 years old when he, along with brothers Wiley and Ronnie Bridgman, was convicted for the murder of Harold Franks in 1974. The case against them was built on the shaky testimony of a 13-year-old boy, who later admitted he had been coerced by police. Despite maintaining their innocence, the trio was sentenced to death, though their sentences were later commuted to life in prison. For decades, the three men fought to prove their innocence, but it wasn't until 2011 that the case was re-examined due to investigative journalism. The Ohio Innocence Project uncovered evidence that the witness had recanted his testimony shortly after the trial, a fact that was never disclosed to the defense. In 2014, a judge vacated the convictions, and Ricky, along with the others, was finally released.
And we made it. Just because you're in prison, you don't have to be a prisoner. You got to be a man, regardless of what the circumstances are, and you got to press forward. You know you're innocent, and you got to keep fighting.
Ricky spent 39 years in prison, the longest known time served by a wrongfully convicted person in U.S. history. His exoneration was a bittersweet moment, filled with joy for his newfound freedom, but also deep sadness for the lost years. Ricky's story serves as a poignant example of how the criminal justice system can fail, reminding society of the importance of credible evidence and the devastating impact of wrongful convictions. Clemente Arriaga, a Honduran immigrant, was convicted of a double murder in Florida in 2006 based on circumstantial evidence, including bloodstains found on his clothing. He had discovered the bodies and touched them in an attempt to help, which led authorities to suspect him. Despite his claims of innocence, he was sentenced to death. Years later, DNA testing on the evidence excluded Aguirre and pointed to an alternative suspect, the daughter of one of the victims, who had a history of mental illness and violent behavior. The evidence supporting Aguirre's innocence was strong enough to have his conviction overturned in 2018. After spending 14 years in prison, he was finally released, but not before enduring years of living with the fear of execution. Clemente's exoneration underscores the dangers of relying on incomplete or misinterpreted forensic evidence. His case also highlights the importance of DNA testing in uncovering wrongful convictions and serves as a reminder of the systemic failures that can put innocent lives at risk. Thank you very much for watching the video. Do like it and share it with your friends. Also subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss out on any of the upcoming amazing videos.